Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast issued on Tuesday, September 26th. So let's start out with the sea ice edge. Not much going on up there, a lot of open water, but the ice forecaster tells me that there are a few little areas of new ice that's formed. Also with the disturbances that are going by in the north, however, that fresh ice is really getting mixed up again with water. So unless you got some calm seas, not much new ice formation going on right now. And so let's look at our surface map. We've got a 993 millibar low in the Bering Sea tonight, and it's in the western portion, a fully wrapped occluded front, as you may have seen in the other segments on the satellite image. A little bit of warm air out ahead of it, but it's a wrapped up system, and there is some wind with it, and that's able to generate a sea state. In the meantime, we've had this weakening low, but it's still potent, 991 millibars off of Dixon entrance. This system continues to weaken. It has a fully wrapped occluded front. There is an onshore fetch in the southern areas. However, most of the winds have an easterly component as soon as you get north of that. And then for Wednesday, that system weakens to 1,000 millibars. Still wrapped up occluded front, but it's weakening. And so the whole frontal system is really starting to fall apart at this point. A bit of a trough extending toward the west. Good ridge of high pressure along, let's say about 155 west or so. And that's causing some offshore flow in the Kennedy entrance area and off of Kodiak. In the meantime, we're looking at that system in the Bering Sea, 996, still weakening. However, there is, the frontal system is now reaching the coast. Should be some wind just ahead of the front and certainly some onshore flow behind it. It's still starting to weaken. And then also in the Chukchi Sea, there's a bit of a system well to the north, but the fronts are starting to show up not too far offshore. And then as we get to Thursday, we've lost that low in the Gulf completely. And there's a good high pressure system south of the Gulf, 1,024 millibars, and then a secondary center to the thing, about 1,019 or so. Some weak troughs in Canada, but note that the system now that's come up to the west coast of Alaska has really weakened to 1,002 millibars. It's got an associated trough that's linked up with a cold front that's moving through the Chukchi Sea. Again, a little bit of snow with that cold front, and then finally, you can just see on the edge of the screen in the south part, there's a newcomer down there, and we're going to be watching that for Saturday. So, the marine forecast for tomorrow for southeast Alaska. Notice that northern Lynn Canal has got some gusts to 35 knots, gale force out of the north. Seas running roughly about 4 feet or so. Not a whole lot of quick generation there. Also some gusts of 40 out of some of the central regions there. 25 knot small craft advisory for Stevens Passage, let's stay. And then for Clarence Strait, south of 30 knots, seas 11 feet, nice long fetch to develop. But on the outside waters, winds ranging from 10 in the northern sections all the way up to onshore 30 knots down off of Prince of Wales Island with 14-foot seas there. And then for Thursday, just about everything on the outside is onshore now, but only 10 to 15 knots. Still some residual swell out there, but it's about max seas out there about 6 feet or so. On the inside waters, 10 to 15 knots and seas up to about 3 feet. Then for South Central on tomorrow, generally got some sort of westerly component on most of the wind fetches there. 15 knots in Prince William Sound, seas 3 feet. Otherwise, 10 to 20 knots on the eastern sections and seas up to 7 feet. And then out of Kennedy Entrance, looking for that small craft advisory type wind, 30 knots, seas 8 feet, but in Cook Inlet, not a whole lot going on, seas up to 3 feet. And then for Thursday, just a generally westerly component just about everywhere. Winds only ranging 10 to 15 knots, seas up to 4 feet off of Kennedy Entrance, otherwise not a whole lot of sea state going on either. For Wednesday, for the peninsula and Kodiak Island, we've got, first of all, in the eastern sections, winds ranging up to 25 knots off of Kodiak Island, seas up to 8 feet. But then as you get further south, mixed wind direction and about 10 to 15 knots or so, seas up to 4 feet. But on the Bering Sea side, 15 knots, seas 3 feet in Bristol Bay, but comes all the way around to southerly as you get further west, so wind 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And then on Thursday, as that low gets a little bit closer, you can see southwesterlies and southerlies all across the Bering Sea side, but only 10 to 15 knots, seas up to 5 feet or so. And then on the Gulf side, we've got generally southwesterlies, about 15 knots or so, seas as high as 4 feet. And then out for the Aleutians. So for Wednesday, that low still has some potency. We've got 15 knots in the eastern sections, but as you get further and further west, winds ramping up from 20 to 25 knots, and finally when you get off of Shimmy, about 30 knots, and it's got a westerly direction. And then seas up to 11 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to about 11 feet on the Pacific side, the further west, but dropping off to about 5 feet or so south of the Aleutians. And then for Thursday, now we see some northwesterlies behind that low kicking in. Some pretty good sea state in the Pribilofs area. But what we're seeing is really 10 to 15 knots because that low is weakened so much. Seas up to 7 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to about 6 feet on the Pacific side. And then for Wednesday for the West Coast, winds ramping up in southerlies, generally 10 knots as you get up in Norton Sound, but up to 20 knots for the Pribilof, St. Matthew area and such, and seas about 6 feet. And then for Thursday, now we're ramping up a little bit. For the Pribilofs, westerlies 25 knots, seas 9 feet with a pretty decent fetch there. But then onshore wind down in the southern sections, 20 knots, seas up to 4 feet, and then generally some southerly directions as you get further north, 15 to 20 knots, and seas up to 5 feet. Now for the northern sections, generally westerlies along the north slope, particularly into the Beaufort Sea with 15 knots there and seas about 3 feet. But and for the Chukchi and through the Bering Strait, wind 10 to 15 knots, seas up to about 3 feet or so. And then for Thursday, for that again for the Chukchi and the Bering Strait area, we've got 15 to 20 knots, seas as high as 5 feet or so, but you've got to begin down toward Norton Sound or in the Chukchi. And then southerlies, 15 knots along the north slope, seas 3 feet. Not a whole lot of fetch there, so it'll be a short period wind wave. And westerlies, 15 knots as you get over into the Beaufort. So that's it for our marine forecasts for Wednesday and Thursday. Please stay safe out there and do file a float plan. Thanks for tuning in.